Hey everyone, this is Nathanael Rutherford from Vol Basketball Fever, just giving you a little bit of a breakdown here for Tennessee's Memphis game this weekend, Saturday, noon tip-off, 11 local time at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. Just really quickly want to break down a few things here. Why I think Tennessee can win, why Memphis scares me, and maybe share a score prediction with you, because it's not a game that I think a week or two ago we thought this should be an easier win for Tennessee. Don't think that's the case right now. And one of those reasons I look at Memphis's length. They have a lot of the same problems. They present a lot of the same problems that Texas Tech did for Tennessee in terms of having a lot of guys that are about 6'7", 6'8" or so. You're looking at, I think, 4 of their 5 main guys that are on the floor most of the time are around that same size, especially Jalen Duran, who's, I think, 6'11", 6'10", 250. This is a big game where I think someone like Olivier Camois or Brendan Huntley Hatfield really needs to step up for Tennessee. Don't know if they're going to or not. We'll see, but they have a lot of the same length that I saw, bothered Tennessee big time against Texas Tech. That game turned out. I don't expect Tennessee to have as bad of a shooting night as they did against Texas Tech. But, if Tennessee can't get the 3 to fall, I don't necessarily trust their bigs to get it done for them. And we saw it happen against Texas Tech. And the same thing happened with Alabama. Alabama was a very good offensive team who shot the 3 ball really well. Against Memphis, though, they went 10 of 33 from 3, which is about a 30% percentage there. And we saw they get blown out in the second half. They trailed by 5 at halftime and never could get back into it because they couldn't hit threes. Their interior wasn't able to do a whole lot there either. And especially their interior defense really struggled and really failed to stop Memphis and really failed to be a factor in that game. Another one of those reasons why I think Memphis scares me is they're really good at offensive rebounding. In their 4 losses, 3 of those, they had an offensive rebounding percentage of below 30%. But every other game that they've won, and all but one of them, they had a 35% offensive rebounding percentage or better. So to me, what that says is they use their length really well to be really aggressive and crash the offensive boards. If they put up a shot and they don't get it, they don't hit the shot, there's a very good chance they're going to rebound it and have a second opportunity. And Tennessee has given up too many second chance opportunities this year already to opponents. Tennessee's done not a bad job of rebounding. They've used their length in other areas, with Josiah Jordan-James. Justin Powell has done a good job with his length. You've seen, obviously, guys like Fulkerson and Camois do a good job of rebounding this year. Even Tennessee's guards have done a good job of rebounding. Even smaller guards like Kennedy Chandler and Sakai Ziegler have rebounded well. But the Memphis team they're facing right now, they scare me a lot more when it comes to rebounding. And again, if they're able to get a lot of offensive boards, they have a better chance of winning. Tennessee's shooting away from Thompson-Boling Arena has not been good. They've shot the ball pretty well, and actually very well, in a lot of games at Thompson-Boling Arena at home. But away from Thompson-Boling Arena in their neutral site games and in the road games, Tennessee has combined to shoot just 26 of 111 from 3. That is a 23.4% three-point shooting percentage away from home. Tennessee's playing away from home in Bridgestone. I get it, it's in Nashville, not too far away, but it's not too far away from Memphis either. So they're playing away in a different environment. It's an arena that isn't necessarily always a basketball environment there. Tennessee has played there before in the SEC tournament, yes, but it's still not a traditional basketball arena, and that concerns me when you're looking at Tennessee this year. They shot very poorly from 3 against Texas Tech and a neutral site there. Didn't shoot very well on the road from 3 against Colorado. Shot okay, actually shot pretty well from 3 against UNC, but they shot very poorly against Villanova from 3. So that concerns me. This is a game away from Thompson-Boling. So can Tennessee hit the 3? And if they can't, that's where I get worried because of the interior and lack of aggression and lack of production offensively from Tennessee's interior players when shots aren't falling. Another reason why I look at Memphis in this game, and I'll get to some positives for Tennessee in a second, don't worry, is that Memphis loves to push the pace. They rank 13th on KenPom in tempo, which makes them, they turn the ball over a lot themselves because they push the pace, sometimes to the detriment of their, to their offense. But defensively, they also like to be aggressive, make you try to force you into a fast-paced tempo, and that makes them force a ton of turnovers. They force 17.4 turnovers a game, which is 31st in the country. So they're an elite team when it comes to forcing turnovers. They get a lot of steals. They also block a lot of shots. I think they're averaging like 7 blocks a game, which is in the top 20, maybe I think top 15 in the country right now too. So they force a lot of turnovers, which gives them more opportunities to score, which again drives their offense more. Again, they do turn the ball over a lot themselves. More on that in just a second. But they also force a ton of turnovers. One of the last big things I want to point about Memphis and why they kind of worry me is I already kind of touched on a little bit, is their aggression from their post players and in the paint. They have athletic bigs who draw a lot of fouls and get to the free throw line a ton. Memphis averages the most free throw attempts per game in the country right now. They get to the line an average of 25.7 times per game. Again, that's number one in the country. They don't shoot particularly great from there. They've only made 68.1% of their free throws, which is, I think, in the 240s in the country. But still, they get to the line a ton. You look at Tennessee, they have one of the lowest totals in the country of free throw attempts per game, averaging only 11.6. There are 358 Division I basketball teams in the country. Tennessee's free throw attempts per game ranks 352nd. So that's a big discrepancy. Obviously, that's a lot of it has to do with Tennessee shooting a lot more threes this year too, so it kind of sort of balances out. But this is a rarity for a Rick Barnes team, that they're not driving to the basket and drawing a lot of fouls and getting to the free throw line. So foul trouble is worth watching. Does Tennessee have a couple of bigs get in foul trouble? And if they do, does it mean they're going to be forced to go to their 1-4 lineup where they have one post and then 4 guards? And then how does that affect them when they're playing Memphis, who likes to play a couple of bigs at the same time and have, again, athletic bigs who can do a lot of different things offensively and defensively? On the flip side, though, I know I gave a lot of negatives, and maybe you're thinking, wow, does Tennessee even have a chance of winning this game? Yes, they absolutely do, and here's why. Unlike Alabama, Tennessee's defense is elite. Bama obviously gave up 92 points to Memphis, and their threes weren't falling, and they couldn't keep up, and they ended up losing, I think, 92-78 in that game. But I think you look at one of the big factors in that game when they weren't making threes, their interior defense has really hurt without Herb Jones being there. He was Herb Jones was a big reason why Bama's defense was efficient last year, even with them having a bunch of possessions and stuff. Their points per game may not have looked amazing, but he was there to help the interior presence and interior defense, and you could see that really missing in the Memphis game, more so than any other game for them at the start of the season. Alabama has an adjusted defensive rating of 43rd on KenPom. Tennessee is number 1 in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom right now. And you can say what you want about Tennessee's offensive post players, at least the offense from the post players. Their defense has been there. You've seen Fulgerson block several shots. You've seen Camwa block several shots. I think Tennessee's post defense, again, as long as they're not in a lot of foul trouble and they play smart, I think that could be a difference maker for Tennessee. Even if they aren't making threes, I think they still will be able to affect Memphis's bigs and maybe throw them off a little bit by their defense. And the on-ball defense by the guards also affects what happens in the post too. So I think Tennessee's defense just overall obviously is the best in the country right now according to KenPom, but I think it's going to play better than what Alabama's defense did. On that note, Memphis this season is 1-3 when they're shooting 46% or less from the floor, and Tennessee has held all but one opponent this season to under 46% shooting. And that one opponent was Tennessee Tech, which is kind of weird, but Tennessee obviously won that game. That's the only team this season Tennessee has allowed to shoot over 46% from the floor. And Memphis, again, is 1-3 when they shoot 46% or less from the floor in a game this season. Again, going back to defense here, when Memphis has faced a team in the top 35 of the KenPom defensive efficiency, that's Virginia Tech, Iowa State, Ole Miss, they've gone 1-2 and averaged only 63.7 points per game. Again, Tennessee's number 1. And a lot of those teams, I think Virginia Tech and Ole Miss might have been like 34 and 35. Iowa State was, I think, 13th maybe. That was one of Memphis's worst offensive showings all season. And again, Tennessee's number 1, and this is a neutral site. So that seems like a really big kind of, recipe for disaster for Memphis there, in my opinion. Another thing, though, I mentioned turnovers earlier. Memphis does force a ton of turnovers from their opponents, but so does Tennessee. Tennessee actually forces a slightly more turnovers than Memphis per game. Memphis forces 17.4, Tennessee forces 17.8. And Tennessee also, unlike most teams under Rick Barnes, they like to really push the pace too. Memphis ranks 13th in pace on KenPom. Tennessee ranks 74th. I think that's easily the highest that Tennessee is ranked in tempo under Barnes in KenPom. So Tennessee also likes to push a pace and force turnovers, but they don't turn the ball over much at all. Memphis turns it over 18.4 times a game, which is the most in the country. That's a ton of turnovers per game. And that most of the times, I think there's one game I saw they had 11 turnovers. Almost every other game besides that, they've had 18, 19, 20. I think they had a couple of games where they had 22, 23 turnovers in a game. So they will turn the ball over a lot. And with the way Tennessee's defense plays, and we've seen them get pesky steals like from Zagai Ziegler, from Kennedy Chandler, and doing different things to force turnovers. I think Tennessee will force a lot, and Tennessee doesn't give up a lot of turnovers. I expect Memphis to get turnovers and make Tennessee make mistakes. But Tennessee only averages 10.7 turnovers a game. So that's a significantly big difference between the amount that Memphis forces and what Tennessee gives up per game. So that right there is a big key for Tennessee, is not to turn the ball over and make Memphis do what Memphis does and force them to give up the ball and have unforced errors as well. I think is a thing to watch in this game for Memphis. And kind of the last point I mentioned was Tennessee not shooting great away from Thompson-Boling, and this is going to be a neutral site game. But again, Memphis doesn't play well away from home either. That game against Alabama was in FedEx Forum. Memphis is electric at home, and that FedEx Forum atmosphere is a big reason why. But they are 1-3 away from FedEx Forum. Tennessee has at least won a couple games away from home. They won a short road game against Colorado. They beat UNC, and offense and defense played well in that game. Colorado, obviously, defense played very well in that one. In offense, not so much, but defense picked up the slack there. But Memphis, they're just 1-3 away from home, with that one win being a 69-61 win over Virginia Tech. I imagine there's going to be a pretty significant amount of Memphis fans in Bridgestone in Nashville for this game on Saturday, but I think there will be a larger portion of Tennessee fans, and I think it will feel almost like a home game. It's not going to be a true, I don't expect it to be 80-20 or even really maybe 70-30. I think there will be a good 2/3 split, but I think there's going to be a very large 1/3 of the Memphis fans there for this game. So that's kind of my breakdown of it. I think Tennessee wins, but again, it's all going to be determined by how well Tennessee shoots from three. If they can hit 35% of their threes, I think they have a legit shot at winning this game, and I think they will win this game. But if they're hitting around 30 or lower from three in this game, that concerns me, because I think Memphis is going to look to try to get Tennessee's post in foul trouble. I think they're going to try to be really aggressive. And Tennessee has shown their post players don't like to be super aggressive. I don't think they're soft, because I don't think John Fulkerson is soft necessarily. I think he plays more finesse style, but he doesn't have a soft mentality, that's for sure. And I think Tennessee's players aren't soft. I think a lot of the post players just have a more finesse style. This is a game I would love to see Brandon Helton Hatfield really explode and show his aggression. He's played more in the last couple games. I think it's been on purpose to try to bring him along to get him more used to being out there and exploring his offensive and defensive games. This is a game I think he could play an important role in. Olivier Camois plays an important role in. But it's going to come down to turnovers and rebounding, in my opinion. And I think Tennessee has the edge in that area. I know they have the edge in turnovers, most likely, at least on paper. Rebounding still kind of concerns me. But on the flip side, Tennessee can get Memphis's players, or post players, in trouble, foul trouble. Man, I don't know. It's going to be a fun game, I think. It might be sloppy. I don't think we'll see the shootout we saw, 3 years ago from that 2018-19 season, where it was like 100 to 80 something or wherever it was. I don't remember the final score of that game, but it was a high scoring affair. But I also don't think it's going to be the rock throwing fest that we saw 2 years ago when it was in Thompson-Boling. I think it's going to be somewhere in that mid-range. If Tennessee can hold Memphis to under 65 points, I think they win. If Memphis scores more than that, especially they get into the 70s, I think Tennessee's going to have a tough time winning it. So that's kind of where I stand on this one. I'd be interested to know your all's thoughts. Share them below in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching this. Again, I'm Nathanael Rutherford from Vol Basketball Fever. Look forward to watching the big game on Saturday.